Hi, everyone. This is Patty Post, your host of the Persevere podcast. And today I have Heather McDougall, who is the founder of Bogobrush. Hi, Heather. Nice to have you on the show today.
Hey, Patty, thanks for having me.
This is like very, do you feel like you're on a radio show right now with how I do my intro? It's like
I
very
love it.
theatrical.
It's great. And you have the background, it's all like set up. It's like obviously it's official, but it feels good. I like the setup.
Thank you very much. Uh, I'm actually in my closet. It has the best sound. So uh, I like that because it's in our office, it's really echoey.
Yeah,
And this makes just for a perfect environment. And I feel super comfortable. So makes it very
perfect.
nice. Yes.
I'm in the guest bedroom that right now happens to have two mattresses stacked on top of the so we got some like interesting
Yes.
acoustical, setups to make it all happen.
And your sound is perfect. So
Great.
thank you very much. That's always important for a guest. So Heather, you and I actually met by way of the community in Fargo in North Dakota, and we had coffee and we have kept tabs on one another, like rooting one another on. And I have been really impressed and super like I'm going to get like emotional when I say this because I've been very inspired by you, Heather.
Mm.
I love it when you share just your teachings, what you're working on. It's so authentic. And like, so first of all, everyone needs to follow Heather on Instagram, and it's hello.this_is_Heather. And if you just want to be lifted up with a beautiful smile, and follow her stories and then follow her reels too. I love your new branding. So let's get into it because on here you have global speaker, mentor, entrepreneur, and helping change makers activate their missions for people and the planet. So if we can first start with you and your background and BOGO, and then what you're working on now. I'm thinking of 3 different ways to talk about you today. It's all about you and why our guests should feel inspired by you.
Thanks so much, Patty. I really appreciate that. And it's like one of the awesome things because I'm so happy that I can be inspiring to you and to others and same back, right? I love watching what you have going on. And it really is so important, probably for everyone, but as women in this space,
Yes.
that we're like, we can see each other succeed and cheer each other on because it makes such a huge, huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, my background. I mean, I grew up in North Dakota, so I kind of had the North Dakota sense, whatever that exactly means. I mean, lots of places in the world have it, but strong sense of community. And I grew up in Jamestown, which most communities in Fargo are like, or sorry, in Fargo, most communities in North Dakota are like this. In that, it's very driven. The economy is very driven by agriculture. I mean, now of course, energy more so even than when I was a kid. But I think I talk about that as being such a powerful part of sort of the subconscious of me being an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and caring about the planet and caring about people. Because even if folks here aren't like overall known as tree huggers per se, there's this really strong connection to what's going on in the environment because the economy is directly related to what's happening with the weather
Yes.
and everything. So that kind of carried me through, and I always knew that I was going to be doing something with social change. And I mean, even as a kid and in high school, just any little entrepreneurial thing or putting on benefit concerts and just always trying to be on the move and help people. And I went to undergrad in Moorhead at Concordia and then went on to law school. And in law school, it's really where I dove into so many topics, including like environmental policy and legislation. I worked with lobbyists. I worked on victims' rights of sexual crimes. Just really, I often call law school for me as a graduate degree in liberal arts.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like I was able to get in. I went to law school to learn about the intersection between society and our laws and how those two play off of each other. and eventually found my way into working for a venture capital attorney. And that just kind of kept evolving into how do we use business for good?
Yeah.
And it really opened my eyes to this powerful, cool tool we have in business.
Mhm. That is so cool. I think every entrepreneur at our core, we have how can we use our influence for good, or how can we create something that drives us closer to better.
Hmm.
And I love from the social reasons, and even like politically, even if you don't agree politically, you can have your business, if you're a capitalist or if you are Republican or liberal, if you are doing something to move it forward for the better, like that's, it just seems so normal to me, but not everyone is like that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you've seen that. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and people sometimes could say, I could give two F's about. I'm not going to say it because you might be listening with your child. I listen to a podcast with my daughter. But that's really cool, Heather. And is that how you, let's talk about the venture capital piece, because I hear lots of people saying, yeah, I want to get into venture capital. I'm like, really? Now why? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a fascinating space that, I mean, in any space, there's so much more to learn. And for me, I really, when I started working for this attorney, I like kid you not, on like day two, I went in to his office and I was like, what's the difference between venture capital and investment banking?
Mhm.
And there's probably people listening here who maybe don't really know that difference either, but
Yeah.
I really didn't not know
Mhm.
what I was getting into. And that was exciting for me. But I knew again that I wanted to be involved with change. And gosh, now that I think of it, I can hardly even remember how I got connected to this lawyer, just the way that networking works. But it's
Yeah.
like this lobbying firm. I worked for family law, I like did a variety of things and
Mhm.
then found my way here. And that was such a great experience because I got to see so many different businesses come across my desk and learn how to evaluate a business
Yeah.
plan, learn how to look at a network. What so many people want to get into venture capital, maybe for different reasons, maybe because it sounds glamorous or because there's a lot of money, but there's like the early days of anything is just a lot of grunt work. and
Yes.
and I think for me, the key to finding a level of success at that role was just being a sponge and not forsaking my values along the way. So you see a lot of things come through
Mm.
that you mentioned before this, like there's a difference between inventing something and like white labeling a product.
Yeah.
Not one is not better necessarily, right, than the other, but there are different paths. And I would see some things come through that I didn't feel like were pushing society or the planet
Mhm.
forward. And that got me questioning, well, how do we use business for like change in the way that society functions?
Yeah.
And so it's like by holding on to my values of wanting to make positive impact and really make big shifts, then as these businesses came across, I learned to evaluate the businesses for themselves, but then also in the back of my mind be like, what would I do? How would I
Cool.
make this according to my values?
Yeah. Yeah. So then with Bogobrush, where does the materials science come in?
Yeah, so we partner with material scientists
Okay. Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
to make that happen. So Bogobrush came after I was working at the venture capital firm, and simultaneously my brother was in design school, and just we've always been close, and we would have conversations about how do you change the world. And
Yeah.
we then started a think tank together. And from that think tank, one of the things we talked about was how do we make a better toothbrush? And we decided, all right, now it's time to do something about it. We actually named our company Do. It's like, let's create some action. And we explored a lot of different materials, which is a very to me, fascinating conversation. We started actually with bamboo, learned after about 2.5 years of product development that it's not the best material for a toothbrush. And really, we started all the way back at ground zero and got connected to folks actually at NDSU who were doing some really interesting research with how do you mix plant-based resins, like plastics, but with other actual plant materials. And so then we kind of brought all of our skills together to figure out how can we bring a product like Bogobrush to the world.
That's fascinating. And then why a toothbrush? Tell me about the toothbrush side of it. Like, is there a lot of waste in, you don't think twice about a toothbrush and throwing it away when you need to.
Yeah. I mean, on like one side of why a toothbrush, my brother and I just kind of laugh because we grew up as children of a dentist. And so it's like this subconscious thing. I think that was like, oh, when we're thinking about products, it was sort of a natural flow. But why a toothbrush is it's something we use every morning and every night. And we really wanted to start with products that people are touching every single day, because for us, it's about evolving and pushing the bounds of what a toothbrush is and the material science there, as much though as it is about how do we help evolve our mindsets, because the more you start thinking about, well, anything, it just starts to snowball. So if every time you're brushing your teeth, you're even just subconsciously thinking about the planet or thinking about that your purchase is helping your neighbor, you'll start to just incorporate those values more and more into your life. You know, you mentioned waste, and absolutely. I mean, just in the United States alone, there's like almost 1 billion toothbrushes that get thrown into landfills. And most of these are plastic manual, toothbrushes that are not recyclable. If you think about a standard, like mainstream manual toothbrush, it has a lot of different grips and all sorts of different materials on it that really serve no purpose functionally for the product. And actually, I mean, they serve a point because they make the manufacturing cheaper for the companies, but because there's so many materials, you can't recycle them. So they're literally just waste that are polluting habitats. Toothbrushes easily end up in waterways and,
Really?
besides just taking up space in the landfill. So how can we make a better toothbrush for the planet, as well as create a more enjoyable experience for toothbrushers?
So when I look so if you go to bogobrush.com, I love the convenience of the stand up, like that it's accessible. You don't have to put it in your dirty drawer. I always feel like that my drawer is so dirty. It's gross. But you're saying if I have, let's just call a competitor out, Oral-B, because we know that they're not listening and it doesn't matter. That they have like a grip where your thumb goes. And then there's gold at the bottom. And then there's some other little plastic on it. There's literally no functionality for that.
No, I mean, they want you to think there is. And maybe for some people out there, that is literally how they hold their toothbrush.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll use like this pen, like when you brush your teeth, the way those are designed is that you only hold it in one way.
Right.
You don't do that. You move it around in your fingers, And so when we were designing it, we looked to things like a pen. Pens are cylinders, artist tools are cylinders, even professional dental tools are cylinders, because that's how you get the most like dexterity, and it creates the most simple form that only requires like one material, and it just is like a much better life cycle analysis, life cycle design to the product.
Okay, that is brilliant. And I did connect with you last week about, like, you've inspired me actually, because I don't want to take no for an answer, and that's what you get. Like a lot of times people are like, nope, that's never going to work. And they hope that you go away, right? Like, oh, I hope she never comes back because she's annoying. But when I hear this, I'm like, okay, there's how many toothbrushes? Well, how much in medical is thrown away? And we are highly, highly disposable in medical, right? Our gloves, like, why aren't there biodegradable gloves? Why are all of the single-use plastics, none of them are recyclable? And it's such a huge thing to think it's just going in our landfills. And like you said, the river, like, well, we end up drinking that water that is in the river. And like, this isn't,
Yeah. And animals end up like eating it. And it's
yes,
like, it's not a good situation.
it's a huge problem. And from a founder perspective, everyone says to me, Patty, it's cost prohibitive. Like, you're not going to be able to. So we have a supplement line, and I was saying I'm switching everything to also be US made. And I want it US made. I don't, why would I need to ship it across the sea? And why not make it manufactured here? And then why can't my bottles or my packaging be less bulky? And why can't it be recyclable? And they say, well, it's cost prohibitive. You're not going to be able to do it. And my belief is that there is a group of people that will pay a premium. What's been your research on that?
Yeah. It's like really all over, right? Because recyclable, biodegradable materials really are still very much on the front edge of development. There's a lot of stuff out there, but there are so many people are just like you're saying, they're like, oh, it's cost prohibitive. And it is more expensive, hands down, to work with these materials. Although I will say, even for us, our cost of goods has dropped, several times significantly, but even just by learning how to use scale differently, right? And pull those levers, like, we've reduced our cost of goods by over 65% in just the last few years. And there's just, this is happening because people are asking for these materials. And so companies like us and you, like, yeah, it's more cost prohibitive or it's more cost expensive. It's not prohibitive though, because people are paying for it. There are people who are willing to learn and put that out there. The research is that consumers are willing to spend like up to maybe 40 or 45% more for a product that has like environmental benefits to it. It's tricky. It's kind of one of those things like Made in the USA. We're also made in America. And we love that and we want to continue that. But it's sort of like there's these aspirational values that consumers want to claim. But the product also has to be good.
Yes.
And, and the product has to deliver something to them that the alternative won't, in order for them to actually follow through on that values-based choice. So it's definitely there, but the more that we, especially as founders and startups, push the manufacturers to do that, that's also how we see these costs come down. When we started Bogobrush 10 years ago, like I said, we were trying to work with bamboo and we were overseas and it turned into like a whole mess. We had way more waste. Talk about carbon dioxide. Like, now we've reduced our carbon footprint. We've saved probably over 60 tons of carbon from being emitted just because we produce in the US. So, I'm like, obviously there's a lot to be said about all this, but the more we push it forward, the more that manufacturers realize it's something to do. And I'm just saying all of this kind of history to say, when we started, the people that we're working with now literally were not in business. The manufacturers that we work with, they didn't exist, but somebody else bought an old factory and they saw that there was demand for biodegradable plastics. And, we all work together to move the system forward.
Yeah. That's what you have to do. And I have aspirations of like, well, maybe I'll just start the factory. No, Patty, you can't.
I'm like, yeah, do it.
Yeah, you were on board. You're like, yes, put it in North Dakota.
Yes.
And we'll get it here and we can all use it.
I mean, really, honestly, that's even a thing of there, because it's such a niche space.
Mhm.
It's even as like, we want to grow our business in the state.
Mhm.
We've done as much as we can in the state, but because it's a very niche space, it's like you
Yeah.
got to also go where the experts are.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'd love, love, love to do, and now we're thinking about like what's coming for me in these days and moving forward, is how can we use the resources here and the people who have that interest to help, you know, sustainability in product design be something that
Yeah.
North Dakota can
Yeah.
leverage and build and grow.
Oh, that's such a great idea, actually, with Ken from Finland has been getting in touch with me, and I'm looking at some digital health solutions from the Nordics.
Mm,
And so North Dakota, Montana, he's already working with Montana, and he wants to work with North Dakota on how can we do some partnerships here, and because they want to do business here, and if we can take some of their technology and bring it to the US, it's streamlining that. And um, Commissioner Goring and I were talking about taking some of our natural resources, like even if it's maybe it's corn, maybe it's waste from sugar beets, I don't know, whatever, soybean waste from soybeans. Can we use that to then make a material? But you had mentioned that we are actually have people already that can make these materials. It's more the manufacturing that we don't have here.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's so much really cool stuff. I mean, we work with C2 Renew. They came out of NDSU, and I'm not sure what's public, so I guess I won't go where I was going with that. But they are
That's who
doing, I
you
mean,
work with.
I know there's just some like cool things that it's not exactly what you and I are talking about here, but you know, how do more plants, and it's like the byproduct of plants, right? That's the
Yes.
thing, is these are the kinds of materials that are getting burned in fields because the farmers don't have a use for them. So it's
Yeah.
literally like creating more carbon
Yeah.
dioxide in the air. But when you can take that byproduct and then process it, it's
Yeah.
value add
Yeah.
basically to that whole system. And that stuff is like starting to come, but it's connecting in these kinds of conversations to demonstrate like, yeah, we can be part of that. I'm so pumped for North Dakota and its really big goals with, with carbon and a lot of sustainability things. And I think this is just another thing that we can work to add on to that, because I can tell you that there are people clamoring to get their hands invested in this kind of technology. I mean, Bogobrush has had so many conversations with folks who are, looking to acquire and,
Mm,
understand this technology.
that's super cool. Maybe we should set something like that up.
Yeah. Here we go. Started
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah, there we go. We can tie it back to this, and it's recorded. There. Boom. That's how a lot of businesses start, just like with you and your brother, right? Your think
Hmm.
tank, and um like moving into women, and what you're talking about, and the platform that you're building for yourself. Like you are a wealth of knowledge, and you're inspiring people with not only your brilliant ideas, but putting yourself out there to share who you are. And can you talk to me about that has to be a process, and it's scary. Personal branding is very scary, because we're scared of being judged. And I think from a female, my personal perspective, I go in ebbs and flows. I'm like, oh yes, I am totally bold and I'm a risk taker. I don't care what anyone thinks about me. And then I will do it. And I don't know, something happens maybe a week later and I don't feel like it anymore. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Why would I give people advice? Wondering if you go through the things like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
you do?
Oh yeah, definitely. 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 I mean, I work with like, oh, how many? I interrupted your question though. Did you want to?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I wanted to see if am I alone here?
Definitely not alone. And I think even folks who've like built really large personal brands, which, that's the goal. I want to help impact people with what I've learned and just who I am, right? Each one of us, really, we have our own voice. And I do believe it, like, to my very core, that maybe not everybody is meant to be like out in front and having like something to say on a stage or on a podcast, but every single one of us has a really unique purpose and voice that, if we use it and tap into it, like, makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
And but I think almost everyone still deals with that, like, imposter syndrome. And I think it's because even just in like our own business, even when you're pushing Checkable, or for me, Bogobrush, or anything that comes next, like, there's always that front edge, and the front edge is always vulnerable. Like, that's just the nature of growth. And so in my own personal brand and putting that forward, until now, it's been much more of like a side project, speaking and things. I love to do that. But Bogobrush was always much more of a focus. And now I'm at a place where I'm able to kind of transition that to making my voice more of a priority. And so I feel that tension of like, oh, well, is what I have to say really important? Is it really different? So you have like this imposter space, as well as I do think I've worked with a lot of coaches. I'm always working with someone who can help hold me accountable to the different growth
Yeah.
goals that I have.
Yep.
And these are so common among, well, women. I mean, men, I think, face it too, just in different ways. And the world is set up to empower men to be more bold than women, just historically. Like, these are just, facts. So it's just a different dynamic. But yeah, women, we face it. We want to please people. We want to, culturally, right? We want to please people. We want to make sure that everyone is taken care of. There's that nurturer in us, the
Yeah.
hospitality, which are wonderful, wonderful traits. And I just work on, how do I trust that those things get heard by the right people? Like, I'm not meant to reach every single person, but that who is right to hear my message will hear it. And just to know that I'm speaking with the very best intentions every time I do. And if somebody doesn't like it, it's not my intention to hurt them. And I
Right.
just keep going.
I think Gary Vee says that he loves the haters. Like,
Yeah.
he like leans into the haters. It like makes him that much better. I'm like, well, I don't know if I have
Yeah.
haters, but it just is like, I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah, he does say something about that too. I think he also says, Gary Vee also talks about that if we lean too much into the people who are just always raving about us or products or whatever, that we can be detached from the reality that, we're not like the bee's knees to everyone, or that our solutions aren't the greatest thing ever in the entire world. Like, they're wonderful and they're meant for a lot of really wonderful people. But, it's like, I think that's kind of what he says. Like, it keeps our egos grounded.
Mm-hmm. So how'd you get your framework to decide what you were, so you're speaking and are you a professor at NDSU, or are you a guest professor?
So yeah, there I've done like guest speaking, same thing with at Concordia, same thing at UND. I mean, it all just kind of evolves into itself, but it's the process of, well, what is it that lights my soul on fire? And I even like work one-on-one with people on these things now, because we evolve. I mean, you've evolved through different brands, different companies, and we get to these stages of like, what happens, right? How do I keep growing? What is my brand? What is the message I want to be saying? So going through those exercises, working with coaches on what is my overall mission. And it's like I say on Instagram, really, like, my mission in life, I feel like my calling is to like help us connect with each other and the planet. So I believe there's like a spiritual thing that happens everywhere. Everywhere is spiritual. But there's these things that the more we do that, then the more the more good for the planet, because we're actually listening to what the planet needs. We're actually listening to what our neighbors need. So this feels like my calling. And as I evolve, as my experiences grow, how do I allow my message to evolve? At one point, my message was really strong on like, hey, use your Bogobrush all the time. And I still love Bogobrush. But you know, we're like transitioning that so that the next set of humans who know how to help the brand thrive at that level will be able to do that. And it's like, so it's what sets my soul on fire, as well as what are my zones of genius, you know? And for me, it really is like being on stage, being in front of people, connecting with people. I love listening and like connecting. So one of my edges of vulnerability is sharing my stories more deeply, so that it's not just, you know, there's like another way for people to connect with me. But yeah, zones of genius, what lights my soul on fire, and just who and how and what do I surround myself with to make those things be supported. And from there, it just sort of, you know, falls into place. You learn about new business models on where to speak, what things I want to speak about, and the opportunities just kind of start to unfold.
And so you have spent a lot of your life, or a lot of your last few years, in Amsterdam. Did you do any have you done a lot of international speaking?
Yeah, so my husband, David, worked in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi for, I guess, like a total of 7 years. So in 2014 is when we started our international living over in the Middle East. And Bogobrush was in product development at that time. And I was still just speaking and doing a lot of other things. So I've really grown my speaking, my community facilitation internationally more. I've spoken on, you know, stages in Abu Dhabi. I've done community facilitations, in Amsterdam, at universities in the Netherlands. I've done work, still doing some ongoing work in the Maldives, which are islands in the Indian Ocean.
Gosh.
It's just afforded me to like access to places in the world that, had I not lived, you know, in the United Arab Emirates, these places would have been a lot farther away and I may not have gotten to. So it's just community is where we are. So that's really where more of my base started. And now it's being back in the US and growing here.
I didn't know that I have to get a glass of water. Heather, I have this new thing of acid reflux that goes into my throat. Hold on. It's just right here.
Okay, take care.
It was right next to me. I didn't need to share that part with you, but it's something I'm dealing with that's annoying.
Shoot. I empathize. I'm sorry.
I'll be fine. It's not, Dr. Sue Matheson is actually helping me with it. She was such a kind doctor.
I love Dr. Sue.
She's the best. And she took a little endoscope down because I thought it was my thyroid in February. And I text her, I'm like, I think that I have a swollen thyroid. Maybe I have like cancer on the one side of it. And so she's like, you can come in at like 3 and I'll see you. It's like a Friday afternoon. And sure enough, it wasn't cancer, but she was so nice when she put the endoscope. She's like rubbing my shoulder, and she's very kind physician. But yeah, it's been something that I've dealt with since I started juicing too much. I was intermittent fasting and then juicing, and I can't juice anymore.
Yeah, that's a thing with juicing. I don't have exactly that problem, but it can be great for people, but it's like very, very acidic.
Yeah.
And some people, I don't know about you, right? But I know a lot of folks are now really advocating just eat the whole fruit, because then you're going to get the fibers that help you digest and bring it down through your body.
Yes. I am of that camp now, and I just can't really eat. I can't even eat an apple now because it's too acidic. Um, okay, we don't have to talk about my health burden here. Um, I do my last thing that I want to talk with you about is challenges that you have, just something like fresh of just a challenge that you faced. And with our target audience and target listener as being a female founder in high tech, that there are times that we want to quit.
Mm,
And those times are like, you might, again, here, I've sort of had an emotional day. I should probably cry after this. Like, you want to go in the corner and you just need to cry and you want to quit. And if you've had those times, like, what is that self speak as you've matured into a woman that is, I can't say that we're all fearless, but it feels
mm,
like we're fearless, right? As entrepreneurs, what comes to mind when I say that?
mm. I mean, first of all, yeah, I think it was maybe even just like 3 weeks ago, I was on the floor in my bedroom, like curled up in a ball sobbing because there
Oh,
was like a hard thing going on with a contract negotiation that I was just
yeah.
like,
Like, come
obviously,
on.
yeah, I knew that it will all work its way out.
Yeah.
And I think, but there's just like that sense of like, I don't know, just something really emotional about it, right? It's like you're trying
Yeah.
to do your best and it gets really confusing. And it's just, for whatever reason, I think a lot of times then there's other narratives that start to come in. It's like, you're doing something wrong, like you're not good
Yes.
enough, whatever. These, I call my voice Larry.
Mhm.
Larry's a girl.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if you watched Outlander, or if you've seen that
No.
series.
No.
There's a woman, her name, it's like a Scottish Celtic name.
Okay.
It's Leori or something like that. And she's
Uh-huh.
kind of like, I don't want to say evil, but she's kind of like the enemy in a
Okay.
part of a show. Anyhow, Larry is my like doubt monster, and she just likes to be mean to me,
Uh-huh.
and because that's her job. And so I've learned in those moments to honestly like love Larry. Like
Oh,
really
yeah.
just see that side, see like, okay, this hurts right now, and that's because I'm a human and I'm having human experience going through something that's challenging. It's a new thing. I've never negotiated this kind of a contract
Yeah.
before. And I care so much about it. Like, okay, like I just sit with it and I allow myself to see it. I when those voices come in that tell me like, you shouldn't be feeling this, or you should be doing something better, or whatever it is to make me feel bad about myself, I just do my very best to, first of all, become aware of it. And then I like just try to love it. It's almost just, so it's like another person, it's another part of me. And it's like, you know what? I see you. I see that you're scared. I see that you don't know what's coming. And that this is how you feel like you need to act out. It's almost like a child, like acting out because they don't have the tools to process it yet. So I allow these multiple parts of myself to exist. And then I allow like the more mature Heather, the Heather that can see from the future. And
Yeah.
she's like, it's going to be okay. We will get through this. I will lead you through it.
Yeah.
And I think there's this understanding that I've gained, like every month, every year, I get better and better at it, but that all of these things exist at the same time, that the good and the hard. And the more that I personally, just speaking for myself, but we all, more that I learn to expand my energetic capacity for it all, the more progress I make,
Yeah.
because we're never going to get rid of the challenge. As long as we're evolving, the challenge is always going to be there. I'll learn how to negotiate this contract. I mean, I did, right? Now
Mhm.
I'll know like more on how to do it the next time. But every stage is going to bring that vulnerability, and to know that my ability and my energetic capacity to recognize the hard at the same time as recognizing like the power of my vision and the hope and the success and everything that I also know is real, then it just really starts to work together instead of becoming a horrible shame spiral that takes me down. It's an hour that takes me down, and I can move forward in my leadership while also still feeling sad.
Yes. I'm gonna have to give my, is that your ego? Like I've read that in have you read Playing Bigger
I haven't.
by Tara Moore?
I'm
It's
gonna
a
write it
really
down though.
it's a really good book, and she talks about your ego and about how to talk with her, and then she does a lot of futuristic of where do you want to go, so then you
Hmm.
have that. I like how you said future Heather like talks back to, it's going to be fine. Yeah, that's a really good book that I'm going through with my coach. The other thing you mentioned and
Cool.
I went over was you said you've worked with multiple coaches in your time, and you
Hmm.
recommend, it's an investment. I think that a lot of people, it's investment of time and money. And what is your experience in coaching? Why do you continue to use coaches?
Yeah, I started investing in my first like one-on-one coach in, I think it was right at the end of 2017. It was when, now I use this like to speak on and teach on, but I had burned out so hard. I didn't even realize it was burnout. I was like, oh, I care. I like what I'm working on. I care about my company. I can't burn out. It's like, wrong. You are going to
Yeah.
burn out hard. And so I started there, and I've worked with several different coaches just because as I evolve, there's something new that I'm working on. But I still, like, each of the coaches I've worked with, I would recommend to anyone. They all
Yeah.
bring out different things. And I think it's just that it's like someone outside of me to, I'm going to say hold me accountable, but not in a like, did you accomplish all of your tasks
Yeah.
today kind of a thing. Sometimes, yes, like a coach I'm working with now, we go over some things of as I'm pushing new boundaries and like, how do I set up my schedule? But usually it's more of, am I like living in like the best version of myself? Like, am I really like is my mental state, is my emotional state where I want it to be? It's like a cross between therapy and executive coaching.
Yes.
Um, and I
Yeah.
think it's so valuable to have someone on the outside. I've worked with coaches on intuition. So that was a lot of why I burned out, is I didn't know how to really listen to myself. I did, but then I got stuck, and I call that tunnel vision. It's like I kept on this track. It was with Bogobrush. I'm like, oh, I just have to get through this part of the supply chain, and then I can move on to these other areas that I want. And of course, there's a sequence to things, but I was neglecting the way that I thought the leadership, right? That the direction should go. And I was listening too much to other stories.
Yeah.
And uh, I don't ever believe there's one right and one wrong, although I
Mm.
do believe we as people have a more empowered place of existing. And that unique empowerment is our unique leadership style. So I've, working on how do I listen to myself? I've worked with coaches on redefining my relationship with money and like letting money be something amazing that I get to also hold energetically and not, feel guilty for money, right? Money
Yeah.
allows us to invest and to do really powerful things in the world. And so different stages at different times. I
Huh.
work with coaches to really help me keep pushing my, like I said, mental and emotional edges forward. Because like we have big goals, and the only way
Yeah.
you get there is by like busting down the barriers that your brain tells you exist.
Mhm. Like yesterday you posted something about you were challenged to get out of your comfort zone. And I
Hmm.
really liked that. So who, it was your mentor that challenged you?
Yeah, that mentor. Right now, I'm working with. Well, I have two coaches I'm working with one-on-one. But that mentor who challenged me, her name is Renee, and she's so cool because she's like kind of at the not the end of her career, but transitioning. She's built like this empire in public speaking or professional speaking, I should say, and consulting with some of the biggest, companies in the
Cool.
country. And so it's cool because it's a generational difference, which sometimes I like working with folks who are very closely generationally aligned, and other times it's nice to have a difference. But she calls me out in such a wonderful, like supportive way. But yeah, she's like, you need to go deeper, because in keynote speaking, especially where I'm going, a lot of it is about our ability to tell stories.
Mm.
And one of the things is, like, we were talking earlier about our brand. It's like, oh, I think I have a tendency, I'd rather hear about other people than necessarily gush about
So,
myself, which
yeah,
makes podcast interviews interesting. So I'm always just talk about yourself, Heather. That's what you're supposed to do here. But I
we
think
want that.
it's like, so she's like, now go deeper, like really go back into those emotions, mine the emotion of that story, pull it out, like draw it out. And so there's like an art to this next phase for me. But yeah, it's like, and I was feeling it, and I was hearing her call me out, and I wrote in that post, I'm like, you feel these scents, like the lump in the throat, like the kind of like the
Yeah.
gut. It's like, for me, it's like my fingers get tingly, my face starts to feel hot. And when I even mentor folks who are trying to discover purpose or direction in their life, I'm like, that feeling, like, then ask yourself, is that feeling like from a place of inspiration or a place of desperation? And like, that for me has been a really good distinction, because our egos get comfortable
Yeah.
where they are, and they know that they're safe right here. Even if we aren't as happy as we want to be in the present, it knows it's safe, it's alive. So when we push ourselves out of our comfort zone, that creates like a nervous system reaction in our bodies and
Yeah.
with our ego. So to me, it's like, if that like vulnerability sense is coming up, but I feel inspired, okay, go towards it. If it feels like it's a desperation,
Stay away. Oh, sorry, it lagged there for a second. If it's a
oh
feeling of
shoot.
desperation,
Oh yeah. So if it's a sense of, if the feeling of vulnerability has like a sense of inspiration, go towards it.
Mhm.
If that feeling of vulnerability has a sense of desperation, like, stay away.
Mhm.
Because I think the desperation track for me is usually a signal that it's somebody else's story of what to do, and not something that truly feels aligned to who I am.
Yeah, yeah. And even when you're just thinking of topics to talk about, or to speak on, I know that I look like, oh, I want to stay away from that. Or you have to recognize those feel your chakras, right?
Mhm.
And where they're coming from. I found that a lot in fundraising, actually, is where
Mm.
I identified those different feelings. And um, and where I was weak, or where I was desperation in my mind. If I'm raising money and I don't have any money in the bank, I'm fundraising from desperation.
Mhm.
And it's like, even my pitch comes out and my ass comes out as like super desperate.
It's so true. That's even the thing with like money, is like the energy that we carry like makes a difference. And like, yeah, if there isn't money in the bank, like there is a sense of scarcity, of
Mhm.
course, that's there. And then that comes back for me, again, to holding the container of it all. Like
Yeah.
I get to acknowledge that, all right now there is scarcity, like we're running low.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of stories around that, but there's also still so much abundance.
Mhm.
And so how do I create that space for myself to hold the reality of all of it, not to ignore, not to pretend like that I've got $200,000 ready to like do whatever I need.
Deploy. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like you got to work within this space, or at least for me, I really have to learn to like hold all of that power and then just go forward into abundance. But the way in which like fundraising is such a good example of like, what's the way that lights, you, Patty, on fire to like go ask for money?
Yeah.
Because, and back all the way to venture capital, like it's a very like old path and style of pitching. It's such, and some people it really works well, but I remember reading Mickey Agrawal. Do you know her? Yeah, she's, anyone who doesn't, she's like a serial entrepreneur, really cool. Her current company is Tushy, or Hello Tushy. I'm giving her a plug here, but I just think she's a really cool founder. And she writes in one of her books about like, she realized that one of hers is like having dinner parties. So she started just inviting investors to like a dinner party where she could like be in her element and be in her full power and like, be who she is. That was pre-pandemic, and probably she's in New York, so maybe there's a lot more investors around. I don't know, but
I remember seeing a video of it actually, and her talking about that. And me thinking, I always get so nervous when it's a dinner party. I don't think I would do that. Could we do a yoga studio? That would be perfect for me.
Right?
Or like a spin class.
Let's all go. Let's break down all the barriers. Let's get our sweat on, and then let's talk money. I love it.
Get a smoothie afterwards and sit down and talk. Then your mind is fresh. And the style of pitching, of standing in front of like, and you're a robot, and then you're like, okay, the slides are behind me. I cannot remember my projections right now. What is my EBITDA again? Like a year, 5 year, 4 year, like
it goes up. See, it's up. It's the right direction.
That's me. It always gets to that slide and my mouth just gets so dry. I'm like, where is water? Where? Like, can we please not? And I know it's extremely important for everyone that's listening. It's critical to know it and to have it practiced, but it's nerve-wracking.
There's still the reality of it. And it probably doesn't come across that way, right? Because you're polished and you know your stuff. So I'm sure it's like awesome. And that's why we practice, right? Everybody practice.
It is. You have to practice a million times. That's like, it does not happen overnight by any means, but a lot of it is natural and authentic. And that is absolutely why I wanted to have you on to talk about this and talk about yourself. I'm glad that you talked about yourself too, Heather, because you are inspirational. You've accomplished so much, and you're an inspiration to so many founders, and I think just women in general. It's really great to see women achieving and then doing their company, but then stepping out and doing something on their own to inspire others. So I applaud you, and thank you so much for being a guest.
This was so fun, Patty. Thank you for having me. And celebration to it all.
I love it. Well, all of you, I please encourage you to go to bogobrush.com and also visit Heather on Instagram. Is there anywhere else that you would like our listeners to find you?
I mean, I am growing TikTok. I have 15 followers now on TikTok. So here we go.
Sweet. What's your handle?
I think it's hello, this is Heather. It might be hello dot this is Heather.
Okay.
So it's similar, but hello dot this is Heather, I think there. I mean, and I have my website too. If you want to reach out or send an email, it's thisisheather.me. So .me. But I love hearing from y'all. So like, definitely, if anything pops up as you're listening, just hit me up. I'm happy to chat.
I love it. I'm going to list them all. I'm going to follow you on TikTok as well, because I am on TikTok and I love TikTok. That's where the trends happen too, Heather. It's like 3 weeks, a month ahead of Instagram. Yeah. So let's be ahead of the curve. I love it. We'll support each other.
Okay. I love it.
All of you, I encourage you to go to checkablehealth.com. We did a rebrand, so check out our new website, checkablehealth.com, and some new products coming out this summer, which we're excited about. So Give this episode 5 stars too, and whichever platform you're listening on. And I just really appreciate all of our listeners. And thank you so much, Heather. And we'll talk to you all next week.